Today on the Failing Up podcast, it's an interview with me, Lorna Taylor, and how finding joy and defining your mission statement can make a difference in what you do every day.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Failing Up podcast, humble lessons in life and business. I'm joined here with my amazing co-host, Dr. Lorna Taylor. Welcome.
Hey there.
Awesome. And the amazing co-host, right? Like high-fiving it. Yeah.
I really
Dusty
want doctor
overview.
in front of my name, though. It just sounds
It's
different.
funny.
doesn't
Last
it?
time we did this, that came
Right.
up, right? And it's like, we can call you doctor.
Yeah.
Right? You can
I
get like
think
an
it should be
honorary.
doctor,
Yeah,
for
okay.
sure.
But then when you actually say it, then I feel off.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah.
I'm definitely not a
I
doctor.
didn't not
Right?
even
Like
close.
you can listen to Dr. Taylor talk and you go, that's
She's-
a doctor.
She's smart.
You listen to me and
I
you
still
talk.
cringe after all those years. I'm like, ooh, I don't know.
Do you?
Yeah.
Because I just want you
You
to
own
know,
it. I think
I
you
would
own
be
it.
like, if he turned to me right now and I really was a doctor and he said, we'd like to welcome Dr. Dusty Osby, like, yes, my name is Dr. Dusty Osby. And that's what I would be. David and I get on here, though, and we're like, I'm Dusty. He's David. This
This
is
what
Dr.
makes
Lorna
us
Taylor.
look a lot
Oh,
better.
God.
I've said for a long time, Dr. Taylor like cleans us up and makes us look good, but we need
That's
to have a red button in the middle of the table that she can smack anytime we get close to things that we can't talk about.
That's
right?
right.
We get close to the edge
An
of,
emergency lever of
Yeah.
some
that's
sort
right, like,
that we
just
can,
it shuts off
Yeah.
everybody's mics.
I think she would have to do that, though, because her voice is so calming. If she said it, I'd be like, she's serious?
yeah.
She said that really nice. Like, hey, guys, can y'all not do that again?
Yeah.
Oh,
All
you
right.
probably heard that a couple times.
Yeah.
All right. So Dr. Taylor, amazing, grateful CEO and co-founder of Sixells Academy. Walk us through that. Tell us a little bit about you. I know we've done this a little bit before, but just real quick for those that maybe haven't heard those episodes, tell us about you.
Yeah. So I come from education, right? So I've been in education for almost, 20 years. Ooh, wow, I'm aging myself. 20 years, but education and training, right? So came to Sixells to help pour into agents and really hopefully make their lives better, their businesses better, right? Help them really grow in a way that's meaningful. And so really excited to be here. Love what I do. I got my doctorate in education. And what's interesting about that is that I think I at the time saw a path towards doing something that I loved. And it has served me well in being able to do that, which is wonderful. But I think it's touching lives that we can all do, right? So that's really what fills my bucket, makes me happy, brings me in every day to hopefully lift someone up and see their lives changed. So yeah, a little bit about me.
Yeah, I think it's neat the way that we met or the way that we have evolved. I can definitely look back in my life and see all the steps of as I'm getting older. I'm almost 22 now.
Right.
As
You
I'm-
and me both.
as I'm aging, I'm starting to recognize these patterns, right? And what has helped me have some limited success in, again, I've said this before, like finding amazing humans and looking for opportunities to match them up. And a lot of times I do find amazing humans and I don't know the opportunity, right? And so I think you and I, your husband, we courted him for quite a while to come and join our real estate team. What was that, 5 or 6 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And Ryan is just got such a huge heart, right? And I call him the
Good guy.
Jason
We'll keep
Statham
him.
Statham of real estate.
Come
right?
on.
Yeah. And so
Shoe game is strong.
That's it.
Shoe game
Shoe
is
game
so
is-
strong.
It is definitely strong.
You're-
Yes, our closet space would agree with you. Yes.
Yeah.
My 11-year-old now has a wall of shoes.
Nice.
I somewhat blame Ryan for that.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
Yes.
This styling. So we were headed to New Orleans for it was Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was
Yeah.
Mardi Gras. I think that was a shock to all of us.
I know.
And I just called Ryan up and I'm like, hey, why don't you and your bride come down to New Orleans for
Yeah.
Valentine's? And you and I didn't know each other real well at that time, just from like, office stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was cool. And at that point, I think you had just left your work and you seemed unsatisfied.
Yep.
Right. And
Yep.
I thought it was so cool because you were like, I'm not going to let this job define or give me the dissatisfaction in life. And just, you don't see many people willing to just rip the Band-Aid off and go, I don't know what I'm doing next. You're like, I'm going to go fishing this summer. I'm going to spend it with my son.
Right.
That's
And
right.
I was like, look, that's a cool human right there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone that's willing to do that. And
Yeah.
continued to I think at that time it was like, well, if we could find something that was a win-win, right? Would you be
Yeah.
open to that conversation? So you and I talked for months. And that's where the brainchild of Sixells was born, right? Like, how do we coach and train agents to be better?
Yep.
Because I think in our industry, there's a lot of misconceptions around what real estate is.
Yeah.
And so I always look at it and go, we can bring people in, but we can't teach them how to do this.
Yeah.
I always say, like, we could sell vacuums, right? Houses just happen to be our widget.
That's right.
Learning to do that at a high level can provide such a life-changing experience and generational changes for people. So,
Yeah, that's so true.
Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey. I'd like to start off with everyone and asking, all right, like, define failure. When you think of failure, what does that mean to Dr. Taylor?
For me, I think failure means, I would say, not being my best self, but sometimes I find myself going like, okay, the one better idea, right? That I'm always being better, that I'm always doing better, can be a little bit of a misnomer, right? Like, it's not exactly what we're aiming for. I think not fulfilling my purpose ultimately for me is failure. I feel like it's funny, I wrote my mission statement a while back. And when I did so much of it, mentioned joy. I think I mentioned joy probably 5 times in like 2 sentences.
Yeah.
And it was wanting to give joy back and see joy thrive in others, and being able to help them towards their ultimate joy, right? I think that's powerful for me. So if I can do that, that's wonderful. And if I'm not doing that, for me, I think, I love what you said before about failure, that, it's an event, right? And maybe not something that, is who we are.
Right.
So I see that if I didn't do my best in helping someone find their joy or be as much of a bright light as I could be, for those that I'm encountering. And because I do a lot of training and teaching, I feel like that's such a great platform to be able to do that. So if I see that I'm not, or if I see that I'm not doing that for my family, right? If I see my son and he's not lit up about something that he's passionate about, or Ryan, right? To me, that's failure, but it's a moment, right? It's a moment in time, and it's, going past that and reminding myself. I think that mission statement piece is powerful because you can always go back to it, right? And say, okay, like, how can we go back to that? How can we fill that bucket further?
Right.
To make sure we're really doing something valuable and important and impactful. So,
I love that you, because you emit this, Dr. Taylor, just the word joy, right? Like when the first time I ever met you was on screen. Right? No, sincerely, first time I ever met Dr. Taylor, it was on screen, and I immediately knew, right? Like, that came through a screen. And so, if you, like, as you talk about that, and I think a key point for everybody to hear is you can have joy. If you really do have joy, you can have it right in the middle of failure.
Absolutely.
Right? Because here you were,
100%.
right? Like, as you met David, right? Like, leaving something, and yet in the middle of that, David's first impression of you was like, she was joyful, right? She was like, yeah, so I just left my job, that I worked for, and I'm going to go fishing with my son, right? Like, that's, you know what I mean? Like, that's a level of joy that I think people, I think if anybody can, to hear that today, like, hey, that really is available.
Yeah.
Right? And that comes from their purpose.
One of the most amazing things I've seen Tony Robbins say it a lot lately is if you constantly have worry and angst and anxiety around what's going on in life, no matter how much you have, your life is going to be about worry and angst and anxiety, right? And you can find that joy in just about everything that you do. It's really hard for me sometimes to find it, right? I can really go back to my upbringing and fall into these traps of self-doubt and really beating myself up a lot. And you get in that spiral, right? And so I think that I have to find these life hacks of ways to get out of that rut, right? Ways to get out of that, because I can get into that. But I think it's cool because you may have said this, right? That happiness is an elevated emotional state, right? And in order for you to be happy, you would have to always be above the baseline.
That's right.
And that can't happen, right? Because your brain immediately, as soon as it reaches the end zone, it moves the goalpost.
That's right.
Right? It's that pursuit of happiness, right? As you're trying to get to it. But joy, on the other hand, is something that you can cause and you can stay,
Yes.
you can create a state of joy.
That's right.
But you can't know light without the darkness, right?
That's
Like
right. That's
you
right.
have to know the alternatives. And I think
That's
that's us being able to learn that. What I think is cool that probably 99.99% of people out there going like, where did you learn to write your life mission statement? So I would imagine almost anybody you ask has not done that. So you were just sitting
Yeah.
around eating cereal on Saturday morning,
Right.
and the back of the cereal box was like, stop now and write your mission statement. No.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, leaving my role that I had been in for a long time and, what I had been doing and I loved, it was interesting because at the time I was terrified. I'm glad that it appeared that I was really
Yeah.
brave. But I was a little bit terrified. But at the time, suddenly when I stepped away from that, I realized I did experience this like joy in spending time with my son.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think, and spending time with my family and, stepping away, I think sometimes it's easy for us to define ourselves by our jobs and our
Mhm.
roles and what we're doing every day. And I think that was a lot of what I was doing at the time. And so when I was leaving, I don't even honestly, I think there was a book called 10% Better. I think it was 10% Happier, 10% Happier. And it was all about this newscaster that had a panic attack on air.
Mhm.
And he decided like, okay, I need to, change my path somehow. And at the time he just happened to be doing a story about, all these religious figures. So he was interviewing them and finding out like, what's the answer for you? Ultimately he turned to meditation and other
Mhm.
things. But at the time it made me kind of think, outside of myself and go like, what do I really want?
Mhm.
Right? Like I'm feeling like I'm getting closer. But if I don't know what it really is that I want, then I need to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I did my mission statement, but I'll tell you, it took me a long time to really hone it in. And it was when we did 6 personal perspectives that I went back
Nice.
to it and really kind of, got it to a place where I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
Put it up on the whiteboard, took a picture of it, carried
Mhm.
around with me. And when I do get to a place where I'm like, this is just not working, going back to it and going, okay, so how do we get there? What,
Right.
how do we do that? What does
Right.
that look like,
Right.
in this?
And I
Yeah.
love that because you don't most people my fear is that people could go through their whole life and never stop and take the time to unpack that.
Yeah.
Right. And ultimately us as coaches and as trainers, I know we're all passionate about creating the environment where people might ask themselves that question.
Yeah.
Right. Where they might self-discover that there is this other way of thinking of things, other way of looking at
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I say that I too found writing my personal mission statement through a training class, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it just leans to Sixells Business Academy, to the environment that you've created. So if people want to plug in, you're not just teaching agents how to
That's right.
ask the right questions at a listing appointment, right?
Right.
You're helping uncover through classes like Quantum Leap and classes through teaching about the whole self, right? And,
Yeah.
and through coaching
Mhm.
of how they're going to self-discover. I did it with Jason Abrams of all people, right? It was years ago in the basement of a KW in Michigan, and it was about unpacking that mission statement and what a guiding light it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, we teach at Keller Williams, right? MVVPs, right? Mission,
Mhm.
vision, values, beliefs, and perspectives. And we as a team go through them every Friday, right? And
Yeah.
we remind each other of why we're doing this together,
That's
right? And
right.
what that looks like.
Yeah.
So, so the opportunity to plug in at sixsellsacademy.com, right? That's where they can find more information. So want to go and support Dr. Taylor at sixsellsacademy.com. If you want to learn more about her, more ways that you could plug in, uncover your mission statement, uncover ways to find joy, right? Or maybe where
That's
you're
right.
at, where you're trying to get to. Great way to connect with you.
Mhm.
So what have you learned through developing a company, right? You went from being the dean of some colleges or an educator. You've taken some hiatuses. One of the things I love back to the fishing is I do think we get so caught up. I'll come back to the what did you learn in a second. I got distracted. Did you see that? It was like just squirrel, right? It's totally ran by.
I like the fishing scroll. We can do that all day.
Yeah, we can go down there. You and I share a passion for the outdoors, right?
Yeah.
And it's, you can build this life where you build so many people around you and you can have great success, but with that success probably comes a dependency on others that need you, and that can take a lot of energy away.
Yes.
Mhm.
And yet when you're out in that moment and it's still and it's quiet, right? When I'm hiking or backpacking or I'm in the woods or I'm fishing or wherever that is, and you recognize that like all that noise doesn't matter,
Right.
right? Like just being in the moment
Mhm.
can be so empowering and grateful. And then you kind of can look up and compartmentalize them and recognize how heavy or unheavy those things really need to be.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's what, we're
Yeah.
intending to do through purpose, right? Is to understand
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that what we think matters most might not actually be the right thing.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do we keep that forefront?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a slowing down, right? It's I mean, we live in a world that just runs 90 to nothing all the time, and that's the expectation,
Yeah.
right? And it's celebrated.
Yeah.
Right.
They're like, oh man, look how
Yes.
hard they're working,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I hear agents all the time. They're like, I was up till midnight, and I'm thinking, well, that's dumb,
Yeah.
right? Why would you, right?
It's
Like, that's
horrible. I worked
that's
80
not
hours this
living
week.
life,
Yes,
right? Like
yes.
it's taking the time to slow down. And what I heard, Dave, when you were talking about that is, we do all give, right? But you can't give what you don't have, and so taking
Yeah.
that time to slow down, and I think I think that becomes the root of joy, right? We talk about finding joy. I think the language is we just have to choose it,
Mhm.
right? It's
Yep.
there, right?
That's
we
exactly
we
right.
just have to choose it. It's there. It's available for everyone. It's slowing down, taking the time, choosing it, then stepping into it. And then what it does is it puts everything into perspective, right? When you get focused in on, hey, this is my purpose and my calling, and to see you, Dr. Taylor, knowing that what you're doing today with Sixells is very evidently your calling, right? It's just you shifted from, like on whether it be a college campus or where it was. Now you've shifted to, hey, like I'm going to educate people in a different way and in a different manner to help them lean into those new
And
spaces.
uplift, right? Because
Yeah.
this is a tough industry,
That's
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
And so I think if through the training and through the learning and through the actions, we can uplift and create people that love what they do and they share that joy, like
That's right.
that's where it's at.
Well, and
Right?
creating an
Yeah.
environment where they recognize it's a choice. I want to make sure my children don't just fall into the path of following what's been predetermined as quote unquote success. Because I
Absolutely.
believe,
That's right.
in my experience, I got so far down the path of doing what society said was successful and what I should
Yeah.
be chasing after
Yep.
that I
Right.
boxed myself in
Right.
to then having to live a life in order to uphold that success that ultimately wasn't providing me with joy.
Yeah.
Right. But
That's right.
but recognizing that it is a choice, right? And I hope they see it soon enough that they make the choice, that they have the choice of what path they want,
Right.
that they don't just have to follow the masses or believe what's told to them.
Right.
And the only way to do that, right? I can't tell them what to do. I have to put them in an environment where they can learn behavioral changes.
That's right.
That's right.
Gary Keller tells us to train from the front of the class, coach from the back.
Yep.
That's right.
Right. And
Yeah.
and I can discipline and I can hold someone accountable in a one-on-one meeting, but I can't change someone's behavior in a one-on-one meeting.
That's right.
Right. The collectiveness of the class. You ever sit in a class, right, as a trainer and think, man, that guy's talking right to me. Right? Like you
Right.
think
You do
they're-
that to me all the time.
Yeah, yeah, well, and Gary was teasing the other day and said, some of you sit in here and you think that I'm talking directly to you. And let me be real honest, I probably am. I
Yeah.
probably just didn't want to say it directly to you, and I needed to say it in a group environment. So if
Yeah.
you think I'm probably am talking
That's
to
right.
yourself.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry, back to before we got squirreled. What you've learned through Sixells, through developing a company, through being a CEO, the evolution of that. Where have you seen failure show up the most, and where can you look back and go, oh man, in that moment, I thought I was dead in the water. I thought I'd really made a mistake. And then looking at it and going like, oh, that was a cool part of my journey.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I think just yesterday I was thinking, we've got Dusty here and we were talking about purpose coaching. And I think there were moments throughout the past, year and a half where, we were creating something incredible and building something. And you just feel like you keep planting.
Mhm.
And you go, you just want to see that seedling grow.
Right.
And it has in so many amazing ways. And I think, too, yesterday I was on social media and I think I counted 4 in about 5 minutes of scrolling, 4 agents that have been part of Sixells training that had just gotten a closing or, or doing something amazing with their family they wouldn't have been able to do before or, and I was like, this is why we do what we
That's
do,
it.
you know?
Yeah.
So seeing some of that come to fruition but also partnering with people. I think being with people that you feel like really get it, and are as passionate, and that partnership, you've always said it's the people that you're in business with, right?
Yeah.
And I think that in itself over the course of probably the last 6 months has really had this tremendous impact on Sixells and our success and how we've grown into something that people really look to as a guide, right? As something that, yes, this is going to help me get where I want to go, right? And having that support has been a huge benefit for me. And I think, I think maybe my failure initially was that I didn't see the planting of the seeds for what it was. It was like you're trying, and you're trying new things. It's a baby business and it's growing. And now, hindsight, you can look back and go, those were
the
seeds
obstacle is
that
the
are
way,
blooming,
That's
right?
Yeah.
And
So that's exciting.
The reaping of it is rarely what we expect it was going to be.
That's right.
And it's so much, his plan for us is so much better than our plan for
Yes.
ourselves, right? And so some of that is letting go of that and allowing that to happen naturally. I think it's cool that you have planted those seeds, right? Like you've poured in others. You start seeing that success show up. My biggest fear as an OP, right, is being a franchise owner of a Keller Williams system in 5 locations, hundreds of agents going through, and there can be this, maybe because of the way that we're raised or the way that things happen, this scarcity to want to lean in and surround ourselves with other great people, because we look at it and go, well, why would I do that? I hear that a lot of times, like, well, why would I do that? And I encourage everybody to lean in and go, how could I do that? What if we change that statement to how could I do that rather than why would I do that? Because one thing as I've interviewed successful people that I've recognized is that we all recognize no one succeeds alone, right? And that the relationships that we build with each other and surrounding ourselves with like-minded individuals has such a broader impact than I would have ever given it credit for, right? I'm not a lovey, like I need to be surrounded by people. And yet you guys lift me up and support me and validate me and make me feel important every day. And I'm grateful for the time I get to spend with you guys and that we get to go on this journey. As we wrap up, favorite question to ask, right? Think about it. You're in the future, whenever that is. You got family around you. You're looking back over your life, and you kind of say, what do you think is going to be your biggest regret in that moment?
Not enough fishing, I think.
Probably true.
No, I really do think that moment in time when I stepped away from, a long range career and came to do something different. That really was a defining moment for me that made me realize what I would regret is I only have one son, right? I've got one kid, and I would really regret looking back down the line and going like, yeah, mommy worked really hard to make sure that I was giving you the best life possible, but I sure didn't spend a lot of time with you to make you know that you were what it was all for. Right.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us feel that way, but I think that ultimately would be,
I still would say I'm extremely guilty of walking around and going, do you not see how hard I'm working for you? Right. And it hurts. Right? It hurts to admit that, right? It's hard to think that, like, from this standpoint and looking at it, I go, I know it doesn't matter. I know that's not what's important. And yet I find myself because we do find validation in what we do, right? We love being together and pulling on the rope. And so I get mad at myself for using that as an assault against my children, right? To sometimes say, like, don't you see what I'm doing here, right? Like, don't you see the energy? Don't you see that I'm texting right now to something important, right?
And sometimes feeling like they see that, like, oh, they know, right?
Sure.
They know. And really, to you, it's just not being present. To them, it's not being present, right?
And I'll say on the flip side, one of the things that I've tried to do, maybe I'm just making myself feel better, but is I've said to my children, look, I can either be with you and be working sometimes, or I have to remove myself from you to go work behind the scenes. And Dad has made a decision that I'm okay with you seeing me work, because this is the real world.
That's right.
Like I can't just turn it on and turn it off.
That's right.
And so I hope that they're learning. Like, we'll be driving in the car and I'll be on a phone call with somebody and we'll hang up and I think they're on their phone or doing something. And they'll go like, tell me what you mean when you said that right there. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's it.
That's it.
That's what I
Yeah.
wanted. Right? Like,
Yeah.
Dad,
Yeah.
when you were listening to that, or when you were saying that, or you were having that, what did that mean? Right?
Yeah.
Like, why did you say
Yeah,
that to
that's
them?
right. Yeah.
And so I hope, again, maybe that's an excuse to give myself a reason to do it, but I hope that they're learning how to communicate and how to deal with people and how to navigate situations through it. Because I just think the idea that we're going to isolate ourselves and it's not going to happen, I think that's also going to set us up to fail, right?
Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what are you doing right now to ensure that you're spending as much time with Benny, right? That you're not going to look back and go, man, I made that mistake.
Yeah. Well, you taught me a really important skill, which seems like, important or not, it's so important. And that was honestly time blocking. And I tell my students this all the time, and those folks that I'm training, I'm like, I want you to put your personal time in first.
That's
and that
right.
sounds silly,
Right.
because we know lead gen is critical, right?
Right.
But if you don't do that,
That's right.
then nothing else is going to matter.
That's right.
Or it's going to bleed in, or it's going to bleed out.
That's right.
So I want you to put that in first and hold your priorities there. And you taught me to do that. And honestly, I've been able to see his calendar for like, a year or two.
Yeah.
And that's impactful. He has
Yeah.
a hard stop
Yeah.
and some serious commitments around his family. And that was, for me, coming from a world of we work morning, noon, and night.
Right. That's
That was
right.
powerful.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well, I
it's huge.
appreciate you. I'm so grateful to be in business with you. Guys, if you want to learn more about Sixells Academy or Dr. Taylor, visit her at www.sixsellsacademy.com. Thank you for sharing some time with us today. We
Thanks for
can't
having me
wait.
here.
Co-hosts, right, on Failing Up, the Failing Up podcast. Join us next week or on our next episode as we have more interviews with top performers and top talent on how they're failing their way forward.